So I'm just saying little things like that where, yeah, if they're issuing regulations that don't make any sense, you need people in the industry to give them feedback and to say, no, that doesn't make any sense, guys. Like, so anyway, so that it sounds like that's partly the role you guys are playing with in terms of regulators coming in and issuing proclamations about digital assets when they really don't quite understand how it works.
Yeah, and I think it's more than that. I mean, on one hand, the regulations need to work for the industry. If you put forward rules to the road and they're impossible to comply with, what did we accomplish, right? So the policymaking process needs to be collaborative. Industry needs to understand the concerns of regulators and what are the risks you're trying to mitigate for. Regulators need to understand how the technology, how industry works. And together you develop those guardrails, those frameworks, the regulations, how compliance works. But I think where we are today in the blockchain space it's a lot more than that. It's not, I think we're past, let's have a good faith conversation about how we develop what those guardrails are. There are so many businesses that want to develop on blockchains in the United States, but feel like they have a target on their back because there are political attacks on this space. There are politicians that do not believe businesses should be allowed to build in this space, that people should not have access to this technology. And that crosses a line of people's fundamental right to engage in business and in commerce and free speech and right to privacy and so many other things that we stand for as the United States, as democracy, leading democracies around the world. There's really no industry in the world today where you have legislation pending in Congress with significant support that just outright bans an entire industry. Why? Because any other industry in the world would show up in DC and say, this is absolutely inappropriate. Everyone has a right to exist. Everyone has a right to engage in business. You can't just wipe out an entire industry because you don't like it. Yet, that's exactly what's happening in cryptocurrency today. Senator Elizabeth Warren is working to completely ban Americans' access to cryptocurrencies, make it impossible for businesses to operate digital asset businesses legally in the United States, which is a massive attack on Americans. And I believe our role as Americans is to fight for our rights. And I believe this is the fight of our generation.
Okay, well, great. So it's interesting. So it sounds there like it's not merely, you guys aren't merely talking about like efficiencies and look at this and GDP that you are bringing in that, no, there's some deeper.
These are bad faith political attacks.
Okay, yes.
On an entire technology ecosystem.
Yes, and like you say, it also involves like matters of basic economic liberties. It's not just a matter of GDP growth or something.
It's disguised in compliance, saying, oh, we need to make the cryptocurrency space compliant with the rest of the financial system. That's how they'll frame the conversations, but that's really an excuse. If you actually read the text of these proposals, they would completely ban an entire industry.
So to give people some specifics, should we start with the SAB 121? Is that a good place to take the conversation?
Yeah, so at time of recording, so on May 8th, the House of Representatives passed a joint resolution to nullify SAB 121. That's the Staff Accounting Bulletin, or SAB 121, that came from the SEC. This was a rule that the SEC issued on banks, saying if a bank wants to custody digital assets, they have to have essentially equal assets in another type of permissible asset, like US dollars. So in other words, if you're a bank and you're going to provide custody services for digital assets, you not only are holding the Bitcoin or the ETH or whatever cryptocurrency, you also have to hold equal amounts in US dollars or something similar. This makes it completely impossible for any company to offer a custody business. These rules don't apply to any other types of assets for businesses engaged in custody. In other words, it makes it impossible for banks to offer digital asset custody services. So
can I stop you, Perianne? I just want to make sure I understand. So the idea is if I'm offering custody services and someone wants to let me hang on to them, whatever, $10,000 worth of Bitcoin?
It's for a bank. So if a bank, right now today in the United States, banks are not offering any type of digital asset services today. Your digital asset businesses they're not banks. They're separate types of entities. They're largely money service businesses, or some of them are trust companies, but it's largely not banks. Like you can't go to your bank and buy Bitcoin. You can't go to your bank and buy Bitcoin and ask your bank to hold it for you. You have to leave your banking system. And I mean, now you can buy an ETF, or most people are buying them at these crypto exchanges like Coinbase or Kraken, Binance or others. And which is fine, but a lot of people use banks. A lot of people understand how banks work. Banks serve a different type of population, and those people should have access to cryptocurrency financial services. So this was an attempt by the SEC to prevent banks from being able to offer cryptocurrency financial services to people within the banking system. So it's discriminatory. It makes it, you're taking your most well-capitalized, your most highly regulated institutions in the world and saying you can't offer these services. It's stifling the growth of digital assets. It's stifling the opportunity to have regulated, prudentially regulated digital asset services for the American people. And the Congress voted this week to nullify that. And a lot of these political attacks are coming from the far left. They're largely there's a handful of political people in the far left that really just want crypto gone. And it's become somewhat of a partisan issue. But on this bill, to nullify SAB 121, 21 Democrats voted in support of nullifying SAB 121. This is extremely significant. The White House put out a statement the day of the vote saying they will veto the vote. They were whipping Democrats to vote no, and 21 broke rank. This is a Congressional Review Act piece of legislation. It is so hard in this political environment where you have two political parties that are just constantly attacking each other, to have 21 break rank and say, no, the SEC should not have done this. They violated the Administrative Procedures Act in rolling this out. This is not permissive. Going against a White House recommendation is starting to show that these political attacks don't resonate with the people. And ultimately, the Congress, the U.S. House of Representatives, is the representative of the people. So the people have spoke and said, please don't take away our ability to have access to safe products so we can have access to Bitcoin and blockchain and digital assets. So we had an extremely successful effort there. It now has to pass the Senate. We're hearing it's going to be vetoed by the president. But we got a very strong vote in the House, which is starting to change the political sentiment towards digital assets in Congress.